In the following presentation, I attempt to do a graphical format on the experience of oneness. And the experience of oneness is a unique, one-of-a-kind experience of yourself. Because the experience of oneness is a non-objective experience. You do not have to leave yourself to grab something other than yourself, to come back to yourself, to know yourself. You know yourself just by being yourself. And there seems to be a lot of mechanics with that. There's a lot of questions that arise, and that's totally normal. I mean, you're in a realm of information that you've probably never come up against in your life, and you're super curious to want to know. Well, this presentation is kind of like an overall general view of what it means for an ego to rise out of self, and what it means to return back to self, and the oneness that is experienced in that. And so, if you've got questions afterwards, feel free to email me or book a time to have a one-on-one, and I would be glad to help answer your questions so that you can experience yourself directly. Take care. Hello. I would like to attempt to articulate the experience of oneness in a diagram, in a mechanical type form of the creation of the manifestation. And within the manifestation, we are a part of it. So we are experiencing the mechanics of reality directly, and I want to try to show you that in a diagram. And you might be able to find correlation with somewhere within this diagram relative to where you are in the self-realization process. And as we know, the paradox is that we're all already self-realized. The reality is that liberation is just realizing that you're already self-realized. So I'd like to start off with putting the self down here at the bottom, and I'm going to introduce a little bit of a new word, the universal mind of awareness. The reason I'm using universal is because later on I'm going to use the egoic mind to help depict the difference between these two apparent minds that we seem to have. And as you have probably heard, if you've been in Advaita long enough, that the self consists of three primary parts, and they aren't parts, they are the one, three parts of the one essence, and those three parts are Sat, Chit, Ananda. Sat being existence or being, Chit being awareness, consciousness, or knowing, and Ananda being bliss, in which the words I like to use are peace, happiness, and love. Moving forward, anything in black would be the ego mind, and anything in blue is the universal mind. So to help you, show you the difference between the two. So out of self arises this spurious entity, and a spurious entity is a false entity. This is a word that I've picked up using or encountering the teachings of Advaita Vedanta. And an ego is spurious because we will see, if you haven't seen already, that It's an illusion. It does not have any substance of its own, and yet we have taken it to be who we are. And what happens here is that somewhere between 4 and 6, our parents and our brothers and sisters and maybe our grandparents start to say, you're a boy or you're a girl, you're cute, you've got big dimples, and so on. And what we do is we turn our attention away from ourself, from our infinite self, and we start to put them on these ideas of what we think a boy or a girl is, or what cute is, or big dimples, and so on. And the moment we turn our attention away from the love of ourself, this spurious entity starts to grow, and we identify with it. And the moment we identify with it, suffering starts to occur. This ego then builds a platform of time. And an ego thinks that there's an infinite long timeline. When it hears the word eternity, it says, I know what that is. That is an infinite long timeline in which I am on that timeline. I'm a moment in time moving down that timeline. Therefore, there is a past and there is a future. And the reason it does that is because this is where the mind plays out on this so-called platform of time. Because the ego needs a platform to string its thoughts, images, and ideas on. So that this time gives thoughts, images, and idea an apparent existence. From the ego mind, it builds another platform. It builds a space platform. This is where the sense of self and other come into play. And the reason it builds this space platform is because it believes it is this body, that the ego is somewhere contained in here, and the ego is doing this body in all of this body's actions. And because it believes that it is here in this object, therefore when it peers out into the world, everything else that it sees are just more objects. Since it thinks it's an object, it then thinks that everything else is an object over there. It is over here, and everything else is over there, and there's distance between here and there. From the space platform, it builds another platform of perception. And this is somewhat related to the space platform, because this is where objectivity comes into place. Because everything that it perceives is an object relative to it, the subject. And again, this is where all of our senses are. This is the touch, see, taste, hear, and smell. And this is how we communicate with the world. Again, this is how the ego communicates with the world, is that it would not know the world if it weren't for our perceptions of it, our senses. And this is what gives the world its apparent reality. Now, where this gets really cool is that when we look at this progression backwards from the world back to self, this is right in line with where the quantum physicists have come to a conclusion. The world borrows its existence from our senses. For if you take our senses away, there is no world. And our senses borrow their existence from our body. And our body borrows its existence from our mind. And the ego mind borrows its existence from self. So everything arises out of self. And this is exactly what quantum physicists have discovered. Every time they go to look for the world or look for matter, they always find an underlying reality that whatever it is they're looking for is borrowed. So take wood, for example. Wood borrows its existence from carbohydrates. Carbohydrates borrows its existence from oxygen, hydrogen, and carbon. Carbon borrows its existence from electrons, neutrons, and protons. Electrons and protons and neutrons borrow their existence from quarks, and quarks borrow their existence from bosons, and I'm skipping a few steps here, but you can see where I'm going with this. And bosons borrow their existence from what they call dark matter, and dark matter borrows its existence from dark energy, and they have no idea what dark energy is. It's only a mathematical computation. What they seem to find is that it's an infinite source of potential that is all one connected, and it has no location to it. As the quantum physicist David Bohm would say, it's non-local, meaning that when you touch dark energy here, anywhere in the cosmos, everywhere else in the cosmos knows that you touched it here simultaneously. It says there's only one. And of course, that's the message of non-duality and Advaita Vedanta. So, again, what we're showing here in black is right in line with what the quantum physicists have discovered. And it shows you the apparent mechanism of the manifestation. So via self-inquiry, ego dissolves. And if you can't see that in yellow, that's what it says. Via self-inquiry, ego dissolves. So a little refresher course on self-inquiry. Self-inquiry is when you turn your attention away from the objective world back onto the source of your attention. So what it's saying is that this objective world, which we've mistaken ourselves to be in, and our self consists of this ego, mind, and body and senses, we're turning our attention away from that back onto our self. And self is where Sat Chit Ananda resides, and it's the Ananda that most of us are wanting to experience, and that's where the peace, happiness, and love is permanently, right? So we're turning our attention away from the impermanence of the world back onto the permanence of our own being. And the more you do that, the more you recognize that I would rather have my attention here in this stillness, in this peace, in this silence and satisfaction. I'd rather have it here than out in this world that generates so much suffering and agitation. And you can see I've scratched out the ego mind. So as the ego dissolves via self-inquiry, the ego mind dissolves. So what is the ego mind? The ego mind is all of the negativity that you experience in your life. All of this agitation and restlessness. I mean, some of the negative thoughts, the doubts, the resentments, the frustrations and fear. I mean, these are just the tip of the iceberg. As you know, the ego can come up with all sorts of clever ways to make you not be at peace within your own skin. But thoughts and images and ideas don't go away. They are still here, you'll see they just arise within the universal mind of awareness. So, as ego dissolves, the universal mind is revealed. So, it's as if right now out here, we're this ego out in this world, and this universal mind or this self or being is back here. Only until somebody points this out do we say, oh yeah, that's something, but it's nothing. I'm just going to ignore it. And we keep being an ego out here, trying to look for this. That's the thing. So we're looking with an ego out here in this world for this back here. And so through self-inquiry, what happens is the ego starts to dissolve and go to the background, and the universal mind of self comes to the forefront. And now it's contained. It's a presence. It's a permanent presence of being in which all of the body and senses and world are contained within. And so this is going on to the experience of oneness. This is the start to experience what that means. And what happens here is the time platform collapses. So this moment in time collapses, and true eternity starts to abide. Eternity is the absence of time altogether. There, according to Advaita, and this is what you will experience in self-inquiry over time, that there's never a beginning, a middle, or an end to anything. It's just one appearing as this, as it is. And in that, somehow in that, there is this wonderfulness, this awness that we've been seeking our entire life. And without a time platform, there's here and now. There's only here and now. Because there isn't a time line for the ego to think that it's on, it doesn't have the ability anymore to so-called look back into that timeline and to experience the past, which leads to depression. It can, and resentment. It seems to resentment comes into play, and how we usually experience that can be different forms of depression. Or the ego can't look forward into the future and become fearful of it, in which disorders such as anxiety can arise. There's only here and now. Everything that's happening is happening right here and now. Even planning for the future is happening now. So the future is now. It doesn't mean you can't plan for it, but you'll see that it's only happening now. Where we get in trouble with planning, though, is we put expectations on planning because the mind has an idea of what the future is going to bring, and when the future doesn't bring that, we get bummed out. And sometimes when we're way off, we can go into things like, anxiety or fear or stress. And this is where peace and happiness abide, right here and now. There's only peace and there's only happiness. The space platform collapses. The self and other collapse. The distance between self and other, anything other than self, collapses. The distance between you and another apparent person collapses. And that is known as unity. And unity is also known as love. When there are no others, there's only love. There's a term for this in Advaita known as love without otherness. When you realize there are no others, that there is just the love of yourself, then permanent love abides as yourself. Perception drops away, so objectivity drops away. And this is where I like to say verbing comes into play, or subjectivity. With there not being an object, all there is subject. And it's subject knowing itself as the subject. You could also say that it's the subject knowing itself as the object. It's the same thing. Self doesn't leave itself to grab something other than itself, to come back and know itself as itself. And so where the verbing comes into play is that there is a term in Advaita known as the triputas. And that means that in an egoic world, there are three things happening. There's, in our senses and perception, there's always somebody who, say, is seeing. There's a seer. There's a seeing over there. And in between, there's seeing. So since an ego takes itself as the seer, as something here, as an object here, the seeing is also an object. And this is a body, and the object's a body. It's an objective form, and those are nouns. They're dull, they're solid, they're lifeless. And when you experience oneness, the seer drops away, and the seen drop away, and all that's left is seeing. There's only eing happening. There's only verbing happening. And in that verbing, it's alive somehow. There's something going on here that is way deeper than a physical object or a noun that's just lifeless. And that applies to all of our senses. So toucher, touched, touching. There's the touching, there's the hearing, there's the smelling. It just, everything becomes a verb. And the world drops away. The objective world drops away. And what happens is that it doesn't go blank by any means. You're still seeing what you're seeing. It's just you realize that what is seen is contained within the universal mind. This is oneness happening. So you experience yourself as the infinite universal mind of awareness. You realize there is only the one substance of awareness, so everything that you perceive also has to be that one substance. And again, that's the absence of distance. That is unity. That is love. That is oneness. There's a Rumi quote that I love. It says, "Don't feel lonely. You have the entire world contained within you." And this is when this blue loop is trying to show that the universal mind has everything contained within it because it is itself. And this is the experience of oneness. It just means that the world isn't a physical, hard object anymore. It's this vibrant, one substance of being and existence and consciousness and peace and happiness and love. I hope you learned something here. As you can tell, I love this. I love non-duality. I love myself because myself is yourself and I love you. So, again, I hope you got something out of this. If you have any questions, please email or add comments, and I will see you next time. Take care.